Who are you?
Morgan Freeman's son.
I've spent years working on fashion campaigns and dissecting what makes a personal brand really stick. And honestly, nobody's mastered branding quite like Tyler, the Creator. And somehow he's done it all without ever even using the word branding.
I did.
He's a guy who was literally banned from the UK because of his lyrics. But now he's selling luxury perfume and designing suitcases for LV, headlining sold-out festivals and sitting front row at Paris Fashion Week. And he did all of this without changing who he is. All that changed was how he's perceived. So how does someone who starts off being called offensive and controversial end up becoming one of the most admired creative figures of our generation? It wasn't luck, it was strategy. And maybe you don't like his music and maybe fashion isn't for you, but this isn't about his music and it's also not about his fashion. It's about something that affects creators and entrepreneurs and businesses and just anyone who's on social media. Today's culture is just drowning in sameness. You know, everything feels copy-pasted and algorithm-driven. Brands are always trying to sell you stuff and creators are trying to get your attention. And in the midst of all this, standing out is harder than ever. But Tyler figured out how to cut through all of this noise, not by playing the marketing game harder, but by playing it differently. You don't need everyone to love you, but you need the right people to understand you. You don't have to be everywhere, but you do have to be memorable. So today we'll go through the pillars of Tyler's branding. We'll unpack how it stayed strong for so long. And at the end, we'll have some key takeaways that you can apply to your brand. These are strategies that you can apply if you're building a brand or starting a business or just trying to leave a mark. So let's break it down. So in the late 2000s, Tyler just took the industry by storm. It was just like this explosion of popularity for Tyler, the Creator, as the leader of Odd Future. There were these chaotic and rebellious teenagers with controversial and shocking lyrics.
Okay, now what about your lyrics?
What about him?
What are you saying in your lyrics?
Nothing. To piss old white people off like you.
At this time around like 2010, I feel like was kind of the last time you could say some of these things and actually be popular. This attitude of Tyler, the Creator and Odd Future attracted a ton of attention and also a ton of controversy. But albums like Bastard and Goblin weren't controversial just for the sake of being controversial. They were kind of like raw reflections of Tyler's inner world. Even at this early stage, he was still like very much an artist. The lyrics felt brutal yet vulnerable, exploring themes of abandonment, depression, anger, isolation, absent father, mental health, alienation, etc., etc. All of these topics that you didn't really hear about in mainstream rap at the time. But of course, there was like insanely controversial and problematic lyrics in there as well, which eventually got him banned from the UK.
Not allowed in the country. He's not allowed to perform there.
But it wasn't just random chaos. Whether he was like intentionally stirring the pot or not, it built identity resonance. At this point, he was just starting to create these kind of anthems for outsiders and also build a community. Without realizing it, he created an audience that didn't just listen to him, they identified with him. But he didn't stay this shocking kid forever. By the time we got to 2017, Flower Boy came out, which was a major turning point, both in music and in his presentation. There was kind of no more intentionally provocative lyrics, and he leaned into emotional vulnerability and introspection. There was vulnerability before, but it was kind of like this anger behind it, whereas in Flower Boy, it was more like just being vulnerable. It wasn't just personal, it was a creative shift, and we were also witnessing this kid grow up in front of us. Then of course, 2 years later, Igor pushed it even further, where he fully reinvented himself and provided this full artistic experience. There was a new persona, the blonde wig and the pastel suits, and it was all being used to kind of dramatize this love story with heartbreak and obsession and eventually acceptance. There was no shock value in this, it was just world building and storytelling. Igor went on to win a Grammy, debut at #1, and solidified Tyler as the artistic visionary that we all kind of see him as today. More as like a creative director who's shaping a universe of visuals and aesthetics and sounds. Following on from that, of course, in 2021, we had Call Me If You Get Lost, which felt like, if nothing else, like a victory lap after Igor. But from the visuals to the lyrics to the storytelling, Tyler was again showing us how to create a world. So we had witnessed this man evolve from shock artist to something much more important. Not growth for the sake of popularity, but an intentional journey towards artistic authenticity. So how did Tyler go from shocking teenage rapper producer to creative visionary?
I don't know, because I'm tight as
Let's break down the branding pillars. Number 1, category transcendence, which basically means he didn't box himself into one label ever. This idea kind of ties back to a classic marketing concept called marketing myopia, which is a term coined by a Harvard professor by the name of Theodore Levitt. So marketing myopia happens when a company defines itself by what it makes instead of why it exists. For example, Blockbuster. At one point, they were the biggest video rental store in the world, and now they're extinct. Obviously, because the way that we as a society viewed film changed, streaming and stuff. Blockbuster refused to pivot because they saw themselves as being in the DVD business, when really they were in the entertainment business. They could have been on the streaming services early. They could have been Netflix. We could all be watching Blockbuster and chill right now. But they didn't, and they refused to, and that's why they collapsed.
Bro, you look dumb.
So Tyler instinctively understood this. That's why he named himself Tyler the Creator, not Tyler the Rapper or Tyler the Producer. From the beginning, he positioned himself not by the products he made, but by his purpose, creating. On his MySpace back in the day, he wasn't just posting songs. He was sharing drawings, he was sharing videos, and just whatever else he made that he felt like sharing. This approach meant that he could effortlessly move from music into streetwear with Golf Wang, into luxury with Golf le Fleur, into events like Camp Flognor, and into TV shows like Loiter Squad, without it feeling like forced or without us feeling distrustful of it. When we see another celebrity brand, it doesn't signal quality to us anymore. But Tyler isn't in the music business, he's in the creativity business. His identity is broad enough to capture whatever he feels inspired to do without it feeling off-brand. And the takeaway from this is simple. Define yourself by your vision and your purpose, not by your product. The broader your boundaries, the more room you have to innovate, grow, and evolve with your brand. Tyler is proof that when you transcend categories, you can start a movement. Okay, the second big pillar. So traditionally, brands have followed something called the STP model: segmentation, targeting, and positioning. Basically, they just divide their audience into segments based on gender, age, income, and location, and maybe some other stuff. And then they target those segments and position their products to appeal to whatever those people might like. But Tyler completely flipped this. Instead of segmenting audiences based on age or demographic, he grouped people based on shared identity. He wasn't after teenagers or men or a certain income bracket. Initially, he targeted people who felt rebellious or misunderstood. And I feel like currently it's kind of targeting just people who are interested in art. Generally, the early Odd Future fans didn't just love the music. They identified with Tyler's attitude, style, and worldview. His albums and his clothing, they weren't just products, they were kind of cultural symbols. And Tyler was kind of speaking directly to the believers. And it worked because in the 21st century, audiences don't want to be put into neat little boxes anymore. People want to connect over shared values and experiences. And Tyler tapped into this way before traditional marketers even had a clue. And the takeaway from this is that if you want to build an audience, don't target demographics. Speak to people's identity. Build community around shared values, attitudes, and worldviews. When you market to identity instead of age or gender, you're not selling products, you're creating kind of culture. Okay, next big brand pillar: distinctiveness over differentiation. Most brands see the key to success as differentiation. They have to be better, they have to be cheaper, they have to be faster, they have to be stronger than all their competitors. They're always competing directly within their category, trying to beat the next guy. But Tyler understood something more important than being better. He focused on being distinct. And distinctiveness means creating something that is so uniquely recognizable that when you see it, you instantly know who made it, even without seeing the name or the logo. Like Tyler isn't out here trying to out-rap Kendrick or sell more shoes than Nike. He's crafting something that's entirely his own. The fashion, the characters, and the graphics, it's all instantly recognizable as Tyler. For example, Igor. From the visuals to the sound, every element wasn't just different, it was distinctive. And this distinction matters because in a crowded market, memory and recognition matter more than slight differences with the competitor. You don't remember Tyler because he's slightly better than whoever. You remember him because he's completely different. The takeaway being, don't worry about being incrementally better than your competition. Focus on being unmistakably yourself. When you choose distinctiveness over differentiation, you create something that people can't really copy, or if they try to, they will just look stupid. Okay, next pillar. In marketing, there's a concept called fireworks versus campfires. You can probably see where this is going. Fireworks marketing is about going big with viral moments or huge campaigns or Super Bowl ads. ads. It's always attention grabbing, but it's usually fleeting. Whereas campfire marketing is about intimacy, connection, and a lasting warmth, like a campfire. It's about building a close and loyal community over like shared values and experience. It's slower, it's quieter, but it's way more enduring. So Tyler has always chosen campfires over fireworks. From the earliest days of Odd Future even, he didn't chase mainstream appeal. He built a small but very loyal community around his worldview, and the mainstream came to him. Camp Flognaw is another great example of a campfire moment. You know, it gives his audience a chance to come together and feel like they're a part of something bigger, like an experience that resonates deeply and lasts a lot longer in people's minds than just a viral moment. And this is why Tyler's fan base isn't just large, it's also deeply engaged. He doesn't necessarily attract attention, but he cultivates connection. And the takeaway from this, I guess, is don't chase short-term virality. Instead, create meaningful experiences and deep community connections. Okay, and the last pillar, I guess, is more businessy. Tyler isn't just a creative, he's also an entrepreneur, and he obviously understands the power of ownership. And you can kind of see this from the beginning, or I know he's had really good mentors along the way from other people in the industry. But unlike a lot of artists that, you know, when they get big, they instantly sign away their rights to some record label or they rely on partnerships for money, Tyler retains control over his creative assets. You know, Golf-winning and Golf le Fleur aren't just merch, they're kind of brands in their own right. He built and he creatively directed both brands and he controls both of them. Along with, again, Camp Flognaw, he has control over the branding, he has control over the lineup, and he has control over the experience. So he's not just smart creatively, he's also obviously quite financially savvy.
Skin glowing, pockets heavy, garage silly, house dumb.
We don't have official numbers, but the 2021 Camp Flognaw is estimated to have generated about 21 million in ticket sales. But owning your own festival and music and brands means long-term equity, not quick money from temporary partnerships. He doesn't have to depend on trends or sponsors to keep his brands alive. He's kind of built this ecosystem where every creative project feeds into the next and it's all under his full control. And the takeaway from this is if you're building a personal brand or a creative project or a business, just think about ownership early. Owning your IP and controlling your assets isn't just about pride. It's about long-term sustainability and creative freedom. When you control your narrative, you control your future. So after unpacking everything, I suppose it comes down to authenticity, which is a word I've used a lot on this channel. But it's the reason that Tyler's evolution has felt natural and not forced. At every step, he's stayed unapologetically true to himself. You know, the visuals have changed, the style has evolved, the music has obviously become quite a bit more sophisticated since the early days. But Tyler the person has always been exactly who he is. But we've seen the art evolve naturally as he has, whether he's shocking audiences in 2011 or winning Grammys a decade later. The personality and the energy have never changed. Tyler the creator in his art embraces every aspect of his personality, the weird playfulness, the heartfelt vulnerability, and his genuine self-expression has built trust, loyalty, and long-term sustainability in his brand. So I think in this case, authenticity isn't necessarily only about being true to yourself. It's about his ability to confidently evolve in the public eye. You don't need to stay the same forever. However, your core identity, your worldview, and your values should remain consistent and clear. When you evolve openly, honestly, and unapologetically, your audience grows with you. So by this token, authenticity isn't just good ethics, it's good business. So after all of this, what do we learn? Tyler's branding certainly isn't a mystery, but it is a roadmap for all creatives and entrepreneurs. First, lead with personality and purpose. He doubled down on what made him unique and let people come to him. Second, embrace specificity. Instead of going broad, go deep and speak directly to your people. He didn't chase the mainstream, he built a niche culture and the mainstream came to him. Third, maintain distinctiveness. People should be able to recognize your work without seeing your name on it. And fourth is prioritize depth of connection over reach. 1,000 loyal fans are better than 100,000 passive viewers. And finally, own your narrative and your brand assets. Tyler controls the story and the stakes. That's how you build equity. Remember, it's not just about being seen, it's about being remembered. So if you stopped trying to fit in or chase what's trending and you started building from your own worldview, what would you create? What would it look like if you treated your quirks as your strengths? I don't know. Like and subscribe.